So I want you to imagine a group of really hungry, just exhausted college students sitting in this stark white laboratory room.
Okay, setting the scene. I like it.
Right. And they've actually been told to skip their last meal, so their stomachs are, practically growling audibly at this point.
Sounds miserable already.
It is.
Mm.
And then the door opens, and a researcher walks in carrying a tray. And the smell that hits them is just intoxicating.
Oh, no. What is it?
It's freshly baked chocolate chip cookies. Like, the chocolate is literally still melting. The butter is perfectly brown.
That is just cruel.
Right. So the researcher sets the tray on the table right in front of them. But next to the cookies, they place a bowl of raw, unpeeled radishes.
Unpeeled radishes.
Yeah.
Wow. Sounds like the setup for some kind of psychological thriller.
I mean, it essentially is, because the researcher looks at half the students and says, you can eat as many of those worm cookies as you want.
Lucky group.
Very lucky. But then they look at the other half of the room and deliver this devastating blow. They say, you cannot touch the cookies. You are only allowed to eat the radishes.
Oh, that is brutal. Just sitting there smelling the chocolate.
Exactly. And this isn't just about, culinary disappointment. This specific scenario was actually created by social psychologist Roy Baumeister.
Right, the famous ego depletion study.
Yes. And it is arguably one of the most important windows we have into the biology of human behavior.
Because of what happens next, right?
Yeah.
It completely upends how we usually think about our own, moral fortitude.
Totally. So after the students either gorge on cookies or force-feed themselves these bitter radishes while staring at the chocolate, the researcher gives them a complex geometry puzzle.
But the puzzle's a trick, isn't it?
It is. It's mathematically unsolvable. The whole point of the experiment is literally just to measure how long they will persist before they give up in frustration.
So how did the cookie group do?
Well, the cookie group and a control group that didn't eat anything worked on that infuriating puzzle for about 20 solid minutes.
That's a decent amount of time.
Yeah, before finally surrendering. But the radish group, the ones who had to exercise immense self-control to eat roots instead of chocolate,
How long did they last?
they gave up in just 8 minutes.
Wow. Less than half the time.
Less than half the time. And it's not like they ran a marathon, They just resisted a cookie.
But by doing that, they physically exhausted a measurable internal resource.
Exactly. Which brings us to the core of what we are unpacking for you today. So welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here. We have a lot to cover.
We really do. Because if you ever found yourself making a terrible decision or snapping at someone you love and you thought, I just need stronger faith.
Or I just need to pray harder.
Right. You might be looking at the problem completely upside down.
Because today we are cracking open this incredibly profound collection of articles. It was originally compiled by Christianity Today under the title Faith in the Brain.
Yeah, and this compilation is just a masterclass. It bridges the gap between cutting-edge neuroscience, behavioral psychology, and ancient theological reflections.
Such a diverse mix of sources, too.
Oh, definitely. We've got studies on cognitive flexibility, fMRI scans of praying nuns, the psychology of body image, and humility.
And our mission today, the central question we want to answer for you, is highly specific.
Right. How does this collision of science and theology inspire Christians to love Christ more deeply and live for him more fully in their daily lives?
Because for centuries, we've treated the spiritual life and the physical life as two completely separate zip codes.
We really have. The soul is just this pristine ghost floating around inside a kludgy meat machine.
That is the exact assumption in so many religious communities. But what this research reveals is that our faith is deeply embedded in our biology.
So to love God fully, we have to understand how he wired our physical brains.
Absolutely. We're going to explore why being in a physical body matters, how habits wire our neurons, how the brain survives trauma, and a lot more.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we talk about daily faith, we have to establish why the physical brain matters at all, especially right now. Because there's this massive cultural movement trying to convince us that the body is just obsolete hardware.
You're talking about the whole Silicon Valley dream. The sources highlight an interview between Douglas Estes and Noreen Herzfeld.
Yeah, she's a professor with advanced degrees in both theology and computer science, right?
She is. And they tackle transhumanism, this idea pushed by tech billionaires that we can eventually map the brain and upload our consciousness into a supercomputer.
Like achieving eternal life on a hard drive. It's the ultimate sci-fi fantasy. You're just an algorithm.
That's the claim. But Herzfeld points out that this techno-utopian dream is actually just a reboot of a very old philosophical error.
Cartesian dualism.
Exactly. The belief that the real you is just your abstract mind and your body is a disposable container.
But from a Christian perspective, that's not just a little off. It is a fundamental misunderstanding of what a human being actually is.
Because the Christian faith is almost uncomfortably obsessed with physical matter.
Right. The entire hinge of the religion is the incarnation. God taking on physical flesh, complete with a digestive tract and a nervous system.
And Herzfeld notes that many modern Christians are functional dualists. They act like the goal is just to escape the body.
But the Apostles' Creed explicitly says, I believe in the resurrection of the body.
It's about redemption of the material flesh, not deleting it.
Yeah.
And when you look at the biology of emotion, you see why an uploaded brain couldn't live out the Christian faith.
How so? Like, think about empathy.
Yeah, empathy is a profoundly bodily experience. Herzfeld breaks this down. When you encounter someone suffering, your body reacts before your conscious mind even processes it.
Wait, really? The body reacts first?
It does. Your heart rate elevates, your pupils dilate, your bloodstream floods with adrenaline, your body gets ready to comfort someone long before your cerebral cortex figures out what's happening.
So the bodily feeling actually precedes the logical calculation. That's wild.
It is the foundation of genuine relationship. If you remove the physical body and you just have a mind calculating the optimal response to someone's pain,
Without actually feeling any visceral distress.
right, you've essentially just described the clinical definition of a sociopath.
Oh, wow. So an uploaded consciousness wouldn't be a perfected human. It would be a digital sociopath.
Precisely. Compassion literally means to suffer with. You can't have self-sacrificial love without the biological hardware to feel pain.
A computer program has no skin in the game.
Exactly. The physical body is the necessary instrument for love. And the complexity of that instrument is staggering.
Yeah, the tech guys think they can just map the connectome, the brain's wiring, like they mapped the genome.
But that analogy completely breaks down. The brain has roughly 86 billion neurons.
86 billion.
Yes. And each one forms thousands of synaptic connections. We're talking hundreds of trillions of connections. And it's not a static wiring diagram. It's highly plastic.
Meaning it literally changes shape, like millions of users altering a live server in real time.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. Every time you learn a word or experience trauma, synapses are strengthening or dying.
And it goes beyond the skull, too. The sources mention we have millions of neurons in our gut.
The enteric nervous system. So when you say you have a gut feeling, you aren't speaking metaphorically.
You are literally thinking with your digestive tract.
Yes, the bacteria in your microbiome actively produce neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine that affect your spiritual resilience.
Which brings us to this brilliant observation from John Ortberg. We act like linking brain chemistry and faith is this new 21st century revelation.
But Ortberg points to 1 Samuel 17.49.
The story of David and Goliath.
Right. David puts a rock in his sling and it sinks into Goliath's forehead.
And Ortberg dryly notes that way before fMRI machines, the ancient world knew that putting a rock through someone's skull severely inhibits their spiritual development.
It's a visceral proof of concept. The physical state of the gray matter dictates our capacity to engage with the divine.
But for so long, the church assumed if you just prayed enough, your mental life would perfectly fall into order.
Which stigmatized the physical reality of the brain. We told people their biochemical imbalance was a moral failure.
Let me push back on this, though, just to play devil's advocate.
Go for it.
If our synapses and gut bacteria dictate our reactions, doesn't that obliterate spiritual free will? Like, are we just walking chemical reactions?
That is the exact tightrope this research walks. The sources critique books like We Are Our Brains, which argue for absolute determinism.
Right, that free will is just an illusion.
But Ortberg and the others clarify that genetics set the starting line, they don't predetermine the finish line. We are embodied souls.
Give me an example of how that actually works, like biology influencing us without making us robots.
Okay, let's look at the MAOA gene mentioned in the sources. This gene produces an enzyme that acts as the brain's emotional cleanup crew.
The cleanup crew, I like that.
So when someone cuts you off in traffic, your brain floods with dopamine and norepinephrine. You feel agitated.
Right, the fight or flight kicks in.
But once the danger passes, this enzyme sweeps through and clears out the excess chemicals, returning you to calm.
It washes away the anger.
Exactly. But some people have a variant of this gene where they produce significantly less of this cleanup enzyme.
Oh, so what happens to them?
When they get angry, the cleanup crew never arrives. Their brain stays marinating in the neurochemistry of rage long after the event is over.
Wow. So when the Bible says, in your anger, do not sin, that command is biologically much harder for some people to follow.
Significantly harder. They have to fight a brutal uphill battle compared to someone naturally wired to calm down quickly.
Does it mean they have no free will?
No, they still have to choose how to behave.
Hmm.
But it comprehensively explains why their struggle is so much more intense.
And realizing that completely shifts how we view people. If I won the genetic lottery for serotonin, I might judge someone struggling with rage as spiritually inferior.
When in reality, you have absolutely no idea what kind of genetic headwinds they're battling just to maintain civility.
It offers so much grace. If you're listening to this and you felt shame over a mental health struggle, there is a quote from Pastor Rick Warren you need to hear.
It's a powerful quote.
He said, "If my liver stops working, I'll just say I've got a disease. But if my brain is broken, I'm supposed to feel shame."
It's a tragic double standard. A broken brain doesn't mean you lack faith. It means your physical tent needs medical care, just like a broken pancreas.
Exactly. So if our spiritual capacity is this tied to our biology, that changes how we approach the daily struggle against sin.
Because for thousands of years, we read Romans 7, where Paul says, I do not understand what I do. What I hate, I do.
We read that purely as spiritual warfare.
But modern psychology looks at that verse and says, Paul is describing the universal biological experience of a self-control failure.
Right. Sociologist Bradley Wright and Dr. David Carrion tackle this in their research on willpower. They define self-control as a mechanical biological function.
The regulation of desires. It's the brain substituting a default response for a better one.
Your default is to lash out, but you substitute patience. And the mental energy required for that is willpower.
Which brings us back to the college student staring at the cookies. Baumeister proved willpower is a finite resource.
Ego depletion. Every time you exert self-control, you drain the tank.
And when the tank is empty, your ability to make moral choices collapses. To visualize this, the sources use Jonathan Haidt's metaphor of the elephant and the rider.
Oh, I love this metaphor. Break it down for us.
Imagine a 6-ton elephant with a tiny human rider on its back. The elephant is our basal ganglia, our automated behavior.
Strong, tireless, but acting purely on instinct and immediate gratification.
Exactly. It just wants the cookies. The rider is the prefrontal cortex, our controlled behavior. The rider sets resolutions, reads the Bible, and steers the elephant.
But there is a massive power imbalance there.
Huge. The rider can steer the elephant for a while, but the prefrontal cortex burns energy fast. When the rider experiences ego depletion and gets tired, the grip loosens.
And the moment you stop actively steering, that 6-ton elephant wanders off the path to eat whatever looks good.
Which explains chronic sin perfectly. John Ortberg points out that sin gets biologically encoded into our habits.
Through a process called chunking, right?
Yes. When you repeat a behavior, the brain chunks it into an automated routine and hands it to the basal ganglia so the rider doesn't have to think about it.
It's how we learn to drive a car without actively thinking about the pedals.
Exactly. But harmful behaviors become just as automated. The sources specifically highlight pornography. Every time a person views it, a massive dopamine wave hits.
And a neural pathway is dug deeper into the brain. It's like water carving a canyon.
Right. Eventually, the trench is so deep the elephant just walks right into it, and the exhausted rider can't stop it.
Which is why just knowing the right theology doesn't cure entrenched sin.
The rider knows the theology, but habits eat willpower for breakfast.
So how do we actually live out our faith then? The sources outline 4 practical strategies for daily faith. The first is to look for what's not there.
Meaning, you have to monitor your willpower gauge. You have to learn the biological symptoms of ego depletion.
Because it's invisible. And one symptom is decision fatigue. There's this great example in the text about a family doing a massive house clean.
Oh, the restaurant story.
Yes, they spend all day making micro decisions about what to throw away. By evening, they're exhausted and decide to go to a nice restaurant.
But the hostess tells them there's a 90-minute wait.
Right, and rationally, the writer knows there are 6 other restaurants nearby. Just pick one. But they literally stand on the sidewalk in paralyzed silence.
Because every decision burns fuel, and their tanks were dry. They physically couldn't make the choice.
Another symptom is sudden irritability. Things that shouldn't bother you suddenly enrage you.
Like the author yelling at his dog.
Yes, his tiny 14-pound miniature poodle. Normally it's cute, but when he's depleted, he screams at it like it deeply offended him.
When the fuel is gone, the dam breaks and negative emotions spill over.
And the most dangerous symptom is sudden vulnerability to temptation. The author talks about his wife leaving a pan of fudge brownies on the counter.
On Saturday, his rider was rested, so he ignored them.
But Saturday night, he didn't sleep because he was anxious. Sunday morning, he's sleep-deprived, stressed, and before he even thinks, he's shoving brownies into his mouth.
The elephant completely took over, which leads perfectly to the second strategy: grow power while you sleep.
This blew my mind. Taking care of your physical body is actually a spiritual discipline. Explain the biology of this.
It's all about glucose. The brain is an energy hog. It uses 20% of your body's glucose, and the prefrontal cortex uses the most.
So willpower is literally powered by blood sugar.
Yes. When your blood sugar drops, your biological capacity to make moral choices plummets.
So being hangry is a localized failure of the prefrontal cortex.
Precisely. And the Soul Pulse study proved this. They tracked people's spiritual states on their phones. Participants had less willpower and gave in to temptation more if they'd eaten sugary sweets recently.
Because of the sugar crash, it undermines your spiritual fortitude.
While eating low-glycemic foods provides steady glucose and protects your ability to make righteous choices.
And sleep does the same thing, right?
Sleep is the ultimate reset button. It flushes out adenosine, a chemical that builds up and makes you fatigued. The study showed people had dramatically higher willpower after a solid night's sleep.
Taking care of your body is taking care of your soul. Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Strategy 3 is, don't waste it.
Treat willpower like Dave Ramsey treats money. Do a budget for your cognitive energy.
Because we hemorrhage willpower invisibly, like rushing. If you're always running late, you're constantly in high alert, burning fuel, managing traffic anxiety.
By the time you get to church, your rider is half empty. Arguing with your spouse over the dishwasher does the same thing.
And then there's multitasking. The sources say biological multitasking is a myth.
Completely. The prefrontal cortex can only pay conscious attention to one complex task at a time.
The example they give is writing 2 different thank you notes at the exact same time. It's exhausting just thinking about it.
Because your brain has to perform context switching. It unloads the rules for the first task and loads the rules for the second. It burns massive amounts of glucose.
And we do this all day with our phones. Every time it buzzes and we glance at an email while talking to our kids, we incur a metabolic penalty.
We have to ruthlessly prune these willpower wasters.
Which brings us to the 4th strategy: train the elephant. We can't rely on willpower forever. We have to dig new neural canyons that lead toward God.
And the secret to doing this is tiny habits. This is where neuroscience meets sanctification.
The author tried to start a rigorous morning exercise routine, a 12-exercise circuit, and it collapsed in a week because he relied entirely on the writer's motivation.
So he switched to a tiny habit. The sequence is cue, routine, and reward.
Right. His cue was swallowing his morning vitamins. His routine was doing exactly one single burpee.
Just one.
Just one. And the reward was throwing his hands up and saying, "Good job," out loud.
It looks ridiculous, but biologically it's genius. The routine requires 0 willpower, but the reward triggers a tiny dopamine release.
It tells the brain, hey, that felt good, let's remember that. It tricks the elephant into taking one step down a new path.
And once it's automated, you expand it. The basal ganglia does the heavy lifting, not the rider.
The spiritual application is huge. Don't vow to pray for an hour every morning. That will fail. Instead, every time you turn your car key, that's the cue. Pray one single sentence of gratitude.
It takes 0 willpower, but you're digging a neural pathway of prayer.
It connects to that N.T. Wright quote. Virtue is making 1,000 small choices, so the 1,001st is automatic.
Loving Christ daily is about building tiny, holy habits that train the elephant.
But life isn't always a predictable grind of habit formation. What happens when the system experiences catastrophic failure or deep suffering?
Right, when trauma hits. This is where the sources lean on Kimi Harris's analysis of C.S. Lewis.
Lewis is the perfect case study. He wrote The Problem of Pain, this neat, logical theology of suffering. But then his wife, Joy, died of bone cancer.
And all those neat answers felt violently hollow. He kept a raw journal called A Grief Observed.
He felt like God was a cosmic sadist. Harris pairs this with the biblical story of Job.
Job loses everything, his children, his health, and he screams at the heavens. He wishes he hadn't been born.
So what's happening in the brain when our theology of a loving God clashes with the reality of horrific suffering?
There's a 2012 study by McCann and Webb that looked at this. They found the determining factor is an executive function called cognitive flexibility.
Let's define that. What is cognitive flexibility on a normal day?
It's the brain's agility, the ability to shift gears, like focusing on a complex spreadsheet, getting interrupted by an urgent call, handling it calmly, and then seamlessly going home to help sort laundry.
Okay, so the study found that generally, severe trauma weakens a person's faith, which makes sense.
But the exception was people with naturally high levels of cognitive flexibility. They struggled with God to a significantly lesser extent,
Their flexibility acted as a biological shield, but why?
because cognitive flexibility allows the brain to hold mystery and paradox. When you suffer innocently, it's a paradox. Premise A, God is loving. Premise B, I am in horrific pain.
Those ideas repel each other.
A rigid brain struggles to hold contradictory ideas. It demands black and white explanations. If it doesn't balance, it panics.
Like Job's friends, they are the poster children for inflexible thinking.
Take Bildad.
Hmm.
His inflexible equation is, God is just. God rewards good and punishes bad. Job is suffering, therefore Job must have sinned.
They literally invent imaginary sins. They accuse Job of stripping his brothers naked and starving widows just to make their theological math balance out.
It was the only way they could protect their fragile view of God. And religious sufferers in rigid communities are at a massive disadvantage when tragedy strikes.
Because they lack the flexibility to process innocent suffering. But a flexible brain doesn't shatter, it bends.
Yes, it can reframe maladaptive beliefs. Instead of saying, God hurt me, he must be cruel, a flexible brain says, I am hurt, I don't understand, but I still see God's sustaining presence.
It's resting in the tension, like the end of Job, where God shows up, tours the cosmos, but never actually answers Job's question.
He offers his presence, not his reasons, and Job's flexible brain accepts the mystery.
But wait, can we actually improve this flexibility, or are we stuck with the brain we have? If I'm a rigid thinker, is my faith doomed?
No, it's not a fixed trait. Because the brain is plastic, you can actively train it.
How?
Mindfulness training is huge. In a Christian context, that's contemplative or silent prayer, observing thoughts without instantly judging or fixing them.
And journaling, right. Writing from different perspectives builds new pathways around the trauma, which is what Lewis did with A Grief Observed.
Exactly. Also, physical activity is strongly correlated with increased flexibility. Lewis took long walks through the countryside.
Physical forward motion aided his neurological forward motion, and he eventually adopted that Julian of Norwich quote.
All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well.
So beautiful. It's so liberating to know that resting in the unknown isn't weak faith. It's a profound, God-given neurological function protecting your relationship with him.
So we've looked inward at habits and suffering. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, how does our faith-wired brain interact with modern social pressures?
The sources dive into two massive ones, humility and body image. Let's start with humility and psychologist Mark McMinn. He talks about the Lake Wobegon effect.
Where all the children are above average.
Right. The stats are hilarious. 93% of Americans believe they are above average drivers.
Which is mathematically impossible.
And 9 out of 10 professors think they are above average teachers. We are biologically wired to overestimate ourselves.
Which connects to the fundamental attribution error. This is key to understanding human conflict.
Break the mechanics down for us.
It's the brain's habit of explaining success and failure differently depending on whether it happens to us or someone else, to protect our ego.
So if I ace a test, my brain attributes it internally. I'm smart and hardworking.
But if I ace the test, your brain attributes my success externally. I just got lucky, or the test was easy.
And we reverse it for failures. If I cut you off in traffic, I say the sun was in my eyes. I give myself circumstantial grace.
But if I cut you off, you instantly assume I'm a fundamentally selfish, terrible person.
Our default wiring is maximum generosity for ourselves and maximum suspicion for others. So biblical humility is an active fight against this neurochemistry.
The Min gives 3 traits of humble people.
Mm-hmm.
First, an accurate view of self. It's not self-loathing, it's objective honesty about strengths and limitations.
And the second trait?
Attention to others. Practicing active empathy, living out Philippians 2.4. Deliberately stepping out of your ego to consider the humanity of the person who cut you off.
Which leads to the third trait. Teachability, fighting confirmation bias.
Okay, we need to explicitly state here, the source discusses confirmation bias and fake news regarding our polarized political climate. We are absolutely not taking a political side here.
Right, definitely not endorsing any viewpoints. The research shows confirmation bias happens universally, left, right, and center. It's a human brain issue.
Exactly. So biologically, confirmation bias happens because changing a deeply held belief burns massive amounts of glucose. It's exhausting to dismantle neural pathways.
It's the elephant staying in the rut. When we see an article that agrees with us, it takes zero energy to accept it. When it challenges us, the brain dismisses it to save calories.
So a humble person actively fights their biological laziness. They do the exhausting work of asking, where might I be wrong?
Humility is realizing your brain's knee-jerk assessment is probably rigged, and that flawed internal lens leads directly into how we view our physical bodies.
Body esteem. Psychologists Mary Inman and Charlotte Whitfield from Hope College researched how cultural appearance norms hijack our neurological perception of worth.
Like the shift from Marilyn Monroe to Twiggy in the 70s. And Jean Kilburn's research showing media trains our brains to demand thinness for women and extreme muscularity for men.
Right, the visual bombardment is endless. So Inman and Whitfield asked a vital question. Does trusting in God's unconditional love actually buffer a young adult against a negative body image?
Does faith protect your brain from Instagram?
Essentially, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the results were surprising. For men, trusting God's love did work as a buffer. It broke the cultural association. They had higher body esteem.
But for the women?
For women, a strong trust in God's love did not break the association.
Wait, even women with a deeply felt attachment to an unconditionally loving God still evaluated their self-worth based on cultural standards of thinness.
Yes. Even though the women reported higher overall religiosity than the men, their faith couldn't override the relentless cultural programming.
That is heartbreaking. It shows how overwhelmingly powerful female appearance norms are. The media digs those neural ruts so deep.
And body surveillance happens everywhere, even in church. We sit and worship, but our basal ganglia are actively judging the weight and clothes of the people in the pews around us.
So how do we fight this? How do we retrain the brain?
Because the brain is plastic, we must change our language. We have to completely banish fat talk.
Like saying, I feel fat today.
Yes. When parents verbalize self-surveillance, they wire their children's brains to evaluate human worth based on waistlines. We have to stop.
We also have to embrace biblical models of imperfection, like Moses. He was chosen to lead Israel, but he was a stutterer. He didn't have that flawless presentation.
But God used his embodied self anyway. We have to train our minds to look at others as three-dimensional image bearers, not flat, Photoshopped billboard images.
So what does this all mean? We started by asking how this collection inspires us to love Christ more deeply.
And the answer is that loving Christ isn't just a spiritual exercise, it's profoundly physical.
It's about stewarding your blood sugar so you have the willpower to be patient. It's building the tiny habit of one burpee or one prayer to train your internal elephant.
It's exercising cognitive flexibility to trust God in suffering and practicing humility to counteract our natural arrogance.
The mind of Christ is a daily practice of operating your physical brain in dependence on the Holy Spirit. And I want to leave you with a final provocative thought.
A good one to end on.
We learned today that your brain is entirely plastic. The neural pathways of your habits are constantly being dug deeper. Every thought you entertain is doing tiny microscopic brain surgery on you. So, what is the most frequent invisible surgery you are performing on yourself right now? Are you wiring your brain for anxiety and comparison, or are you wiring it to automatically reflect the love of Christ? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.